New directions for a new Singapore dream. Singapore's upcoming budget is expected to unveil the policy shifts raised in the Forward Singapore plan. The goal is to build a secure and resilient nation with a strong social compact based on a strong economy with good jobs for all. Last year, there were more than 14,000 retrenchments in Singapore, more than double the year before. There are also calls for more targeted and accessible help for individuals, especially those who've lost their jobs.
There are some older workers who are really struggling more from their daily needs. And I think that is just to give them some job security. And at that level, besides the government assurance package, it's really about giving help to the businesses to continue to employ them. It's really about giving information. So if you look at the suite of, I think, what skills future credit can be used, it's very broad. So sometimes people use it as a hobby, but while you want to give help, it needs to be very targeted. So it's about two ways, not just having a scheme, but to make it more known and more accessible.
Singapore's main resource is its people. So a key challenge is upskilling the workforce so that the country remains competitive globally. Central to this is helping workers and businesses adapt to digitalization.
And if in Singapore we can help to accelerate this adoption by being much more targeted in terms of our support. You see, last year, I think the last year's budget provided very generous deductions for R&D expenses, IP acquisition, IP creation. I hope to see much more targeted, let's say, at industry sectors where digitalization can make a difference, where sustainability will make an impact. And I think this will help to support businesses who are able and ready. But one of the key sectors that I would say have not been as rapid in terms of adoption has been the SME sector, the small and medium enterprises. A higher cost to serve and an uncertain ROI. Then the question is, how can we bring on board these constituents?
There are also calls for the government to think of younger Singaporeans entering the workforce at a time of extreme technological disruption.
Much of what they learn in schools and institutes of higher learning will probably be obsolete by the time they join the workforce. So if I were in Gen Z, I would want to know how this budget, and perhaps future budgets, will help me to acquire the skill sets and capabilities that allow me to pursue new careers, new job opportunities.
So for example, when I was looking at a course, because I'm currently under 40, I had to pay a much larger amount as compared to someone who was 40 and above. And to be honest, that put me off wanting to reskill at the moment because it's not as affordable as if I were older. So hopefully there'll be more schemes, especially given that the Gen Zs who are coming into the workforce are probably the ones hardest hit, that we'll see schemes that cater to a wider age range.
Cost of living issues are also expected to be high on the agenda.
Headline inflation, the average over the last 2 years is about 5.5%. To put into perspective, the 4 decades before that, from 1981 to 2021, average headline inflation was only 1.8%. So people will probably look to see what are some of the short-term measures that can alleviate this, can defray some of the cost increases.
So I think the inevitable things that that's on the top of most Singaporeans' minds are first the rising cost of living, GST 9% this year. So I think what we will be expecting, as with previous years, would be vouchers, GST vouchers, different kinds of rebates and support to help Singaporeans with the everyday cost of living, especially for those in the lower to middle income, where the support is mainly focused on.
But there's also an expectation that the government will be more cautious than last year in handing out short-term relief measures.
There is also a limit to how much government can keep dishing out ang baos. For example, government will still need to continue to allocate a big part of our expenditure for healthcare. Our population continues to age, medical needs continue to rise. So there are a lot of needs and competing demand for a limited pool of budget. So I would say that the government will be a bit more cautious to too quickly give out payouts or rebates, but maybe keep that in the pocket and see how we probably go in 2024.
New corporate tax incentives are also expected in light of changes to the global tax system. From next year, Singapore will abide by Pillar 2 of BEPS, a global initiative to impose a minimum tax rate of 15% for larger MNCs.
Now, what it means for Singapore is that we have historically relied a lot about giving targeted tax incentive to boost certain economies, to boost certain industry and the investment into Singapore. Now, because of the change in the global tax system, we also need to change and evaluate our tax regime. But at the same time, we want to continue to be competitive and attract the right industry and investment into Singapore. So for example, instead of tax incentive, can we issue more specific targeted grants to help certain investments, say for example, in the space of AI, in the space of sustainability? We could also look at qualified tax refundable credits to replace tax incentives.
Ultimately, it's key to look beyond 2024 and see how the budget will be able to shape Singapore's future for the longer term.
I hope DPM and his team will look at the areas that span beyond just one budget. And these are things like the industry transformation, which are probably multi-years, and bringing on board SMEs through building platforms. I think addressing the change for the climate change will be yet another challenge which takes many years.
My wish list is that the Singapore government, again, to be very clear and targeted and focused, be bold to help our businesses. Don't be half-hearted. If you want to nudge the industry, be bold, set a clear target, set the right access, and make it easy for businesses to access these helps. But more importantly is I do really hope that our people get the message that we are in a good space, but we need to do our part.
The first thing that most Singaporeans will be looking at, of course, is the amount of vouchers or the cash payouts that they are going to receive. But hopefully they see the bigger picture and see what the government is doing in terms of investing in our future, continue to be competitive in the global stage so that Singaporeans will still be able to find jobs and cope with everyday living without stress.